Bonjour à tous, chers souscripteurs de la campagne Delta Green chez Achilleos et Matago. J'ai le plaisir aujourd'hui d'accueillir Denis Detwiller et de lui poser quelques questions qui pourraient, je l'espère, vous intéresser. So first of all, Dennis, thank you for agreeing to answer a few questions for all the French Delta Green fans. And I'm sure they'll be delighted to hear from one of the headmasters of the Delta Green. Uh, so first of all, I wanted to ask you what was your first contact with RPGs, and how did you came to know I think it's the first defense in the Unspeakable Oath where you were involved.
Yes. Yeah. So I grew up in New York City, and my gaming store was a place called The Complete Strategist, which is the greatest gaming store in the entire world. It's just shoved full of stuff. And I got a D&D book there when I was maybe 12. And it was the original Player's Handbook from 78 or 79. And I loved it. It was amazing. And I found groups and I played with groups, and I still play with that group today. The same group from when I was 13. They're the guys who play tested the Fate from Delta Green. I invented the Fate for them long before Delta Green existed. That was their high school Call of Cthulhu campaign. So we've been together for years, still playing these games, and we play everything. We play the One Ring, and Marvel superheroes, and Star Frontiers, everything that came down the line one by one. So that was my introduction when I was about 13, and I just never looked back. I bought everything.
And so one day you found out this fanzine called The Unspeakable Oath, and then something happened.
Yes. Well, I was living with a girlfriend in New Brunswick, New Jersey at Rutgers University, and I went into a comic store, and on the shelf was Unspeakable Oath #3, which has a very striking cover of these bald cultists holding machetes. And I was like, that art is amazing. I need to. So I bought it, and they had submissions in the back. So I just immediately wrote John and said, I'd love to do art for your magazine. I was already doing professional art for comic book companies and things like that. I was going to college for illustration. So it wasn't long before John wrote me a big letter back, and we started trading information, and it was great. Really, really good.
It's John Tynes?
John Tynes, yeah, the master of horror himself.
So you were working for submitting work, mostly art, I suppose, at first?
Yeah, arts. But it wasn't long until I started writing something. And I'm going to say something that's going to upset a lot of people, in that writing is easy and fun. Art is like the most horrible thing ever. I don't wish it on my worst enemy. You paint, and then you have to throw it out and start again. Writing is just like, and then you do this, and it's fun. So people hate me for that. They get very upset when I say that. But I look forward to writing because it's much easier than art.
Okay, and then so in 1990, please tell me when.
You mean when did Delta Green come about?
Yeah.
So I left New York in about 1992 or 93, and I just went all in on pagan publishing. I moved to Columbia, Missouri, because I had all this money saved in New York. My rent in New York was like a year's rent in Columbia, Missouri, so I could live for almost half a decade without any problem in Columbia, and it was great. It was beer and friends and gaming. So John came up with Delta Green when we were playing Masks of Nyarlathotep.
Okay.
We were playing Masks, and so many of our characters had died in the Egypt section that it became really stupid to get new characters. Like we were recruiting like waiters. Waiter, do you want to help us fight? So John was like, it'd be really nice if there was some sort of mechanical reason this all happened. So he went off and made up this idea of Delta Green and ran a scenario for us that had grays and UFOs. It eventually became Convergence, and I just thought this was genius. So I took the UFO stuff that he had kind of loosely worked on, and I was a huge UFO buff. So I started writing, I had hundreds of books on the subject. So I started writing an enormous section about the truth behind the Greys and the Miko. And John was like, this is cool. And then another guy who saw our book, saw Delta Green come out in Convergence in like 1996 or 95 in Unspeakable Oath #7, I think.
Okay.
Loved it. And this is Adam Scott Glancy. And Adam, Scott, you should call him, is a history buff beyond all belief. So he was like, I'm grabbing Delta Green and I'm running with it. And he wrote a timeline and we were like, this is amazing. So it all just started to come together. He sent us like a folder of, written pages. And we were like, this has to be a book. So John and me and him, we were working on Walker in the Wastes, which was another campaign we were working on for Call Cthulhu. And we were like, we'll finish that and then we'll do Delta Green. And it took years. It just was so much work. So
what I find extremely interesting is that it's three creative guys that just met. It's not a plan from a company or a publisher that said, okay,
no.
we're going to do Call of Cthulhu for modern audience. So what do we do into it? We're really three guys who had their own ideas and bounced each other ideas, and it shows in the work that it's something of passion, not something of.
Oh yeah. I've reached a point in my career where I no longer work on anything unless I love it. There's no reason. I will produce subpar work, and what's the point? So every Delta Green book I put out is out because I want to read that book. I want to see what it looks like when it's finished. And the best part is I don't remember anything I wrote or illustrated. So occasionally I'll get letters saying, this part was amazing. And I'm like, I never wrote that. What are you talking about? And they're like, it's right here in your book. And I'm like, wow, that is pretty good. All right. So, sometimes I hate it, but most of the time I'm like, yeah, that's all right. Yeah.
Okay. So after this obviously very successful Call of Cthulhu spin-off, in a way, Delta Green, which owed you many awards, after the Countdown book also, which was very famous and very hard to find in French.
Yes.
Because I bought the French edition of Delta Green from Jeu des Cartes, which was amazing. Right. It was something like I had never seen, and I was on my way out of RPGs because I'm the same age than you, and obviously I couldn't find any more interest into some very basic stuff. But this just blew my mind, and I said, wow, I need to know. I want to know more, and I couldn't find Countdown, but it was. I find photocopies on it because it was.
Oh yeah.
There were no. So anyway, then you did some more work for Delta Green, and also some of your own games, Godlike, which is about superhero during the Second World War, and then Wild Talent.
Yes, yeah. So RPGs, Delta Green and Delta Green Countdown were a critical success, but were never a financial success, ever. Okay. We were penniless. We spent all of our money, mostly because it took us years to make a single book, but secondarily because the distribution system was extremely corrupt. And, it would go to a distributor, they would steal our book, sell it, never pay us, and then just skip town. And that happened on Countdown. Almost all of our money just vanished. So we got great awards and everybody loved it, but nobody could get it because we couldn't afford to reprint it. And so RPGs kind of died for me. I couldn't make a living doing them, so I started to get into video games. I made those other games, Godlike, Wild Talents, and Sense of the Sleight of Hand Man, while working on video games to keep myself sane. Yes, another. So I get up at this, 5 o'clock in the morning and type every morning, and then go to work for 10 hours and then collapse. But everything's changed. The market is much more creator friendly. Direct sales are possible. Crowdfunding's possible. So now's the time.
So now we arrive at the new, improved and updated Delta Green that started in 2015 with crowdfunding with a brand new company, it's Arc Dream, and how did it came out? You were still thinking about updating Delta Green and making available again?
I never gave up on Delta Green. I wrote a campaign called Future Perfect.
Yeah.
While during the break, I wrote music from a darkened room. I kept writing Delta Green stuff because I love the world of Delta Green, and I've never felt done with it. And I still have that King in Yellow campaign in the back of my head from me and John talking about that for years. But Shane Ivey became my creative partner and editor and publisher at Arc Dream in the early 2000s. He took over Godlike, and he did such a good job of maintaining that line and the vision of that line and not sacrificing anything. And he was such a huge Delta Green fan that we incorporated him into Delta Green, and now he's done so well. He's a member of the partnership. So it's me, Scott, John, and Shane, and we're kind of the group that decides what happens with Delta Green. So
that's great. And why did you decide to make it its own game and get yourself from the Call of Cthulhu game?
Yeah, well, there's a couple reasons. Most of all, no one owns mechanical expressions of dice resolution or anything like that, and no one owns H.P. Lovecraft. No. I mean, Lovecraft himself offered up his work for public reuse. He literally invited other authors to write and create within his worlds. So we took that to heart. Secondarily, Chaosium is on its own track, kind of making its own thing that we like, but it's not really our taste in Call of Cthulhu. It's pulpy and a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and Delta Green is dead serious and very dark. So dark that a lot of people find it disconcertingly dark. When they jump from Call of Cthulhu, they look at Delta Green and go, "Oh my God, like this agent's murdering her children. Why would she do?" And we're like, "Yeah, that's just kind of the tone." So it's a tonal issue and it's a rules issue, and we felt we had a lot to add rules-wise that just couldn't be covered in Call of Cthulhu. The bonds, the way machine guns and lethality weapons are handled. We just thought Call of Cthulhu doesn't do a very good job of that, and we just wanted to fix all of that on our end. So,
for my money, I think it's a great addition. It's not change for change. It's you didn't do a whole new system, but just add fixes where you felt was necessary, and these fixes are really great, especially the
thanks.
And the way the home scenes are a great idea also to
that's where all the fun comes from is we had an agent recently who accidentally didn't ditch his phone when he lied to his wife, went out on this murderous rampage with his cell, didn't ditch his phone, and his Facebook location had him marked in this town where there's a triple murder and there's a photo. So his wife is divorcing him, thinking he's like, and this all happened in this little scene at the end with the roll, and it was so good. He was like, "Oh my God, no!" Like,
and the fact that the bonds are what helps you go through the horrors that you face, but also you're destroying them at the same time. So it's a great addition. So you obviously you do illustration, you write adventures, but you write fiction too, which we actually are going to offer for subscription for people who subscribe to the first French Delta Green campaign with the short stories, The Way It Went Down, 1 and 2. But I also have here this book. I think is a great way to immerse yourself into the lore of Delta Green, because I mean the text in the handler's guide is great, but it's even more immersive with your writing.
Thank you.
How did you want to write fiction from the beginning on this, or is it a decision from everyone in the group?
No. So we have a wonderful group in so much as everybody just does what they do. There's very little planning. John, for example, was like, I want to write a Delta Green book, recently. And we said, okay. And then he turned in a bunch of the Labyrinth. And we went, this is amazing. Like, that was our feedback. We need more. That's generally how it works. Like, I'm going to write a King in Yellow campaign. Okay, see you in 3 years when you're finished or whatever. And then I hand it in and they rip it to pieces. There's very serious work in editing it. But most of the time, the response is, this is great. And it's so cool. And maybe add a little bit of this. And that's how we work together. And it's always been that way since 1995
Mhm.
with no strife and no confrontation and it's just because all of our views of Delta Green are identical. We all believe Delta Green is a morality play of the real world,
Yeah.
and we're reflecting back exactly what's actually going on that nobody wants to pay attention to. And that when people find that out, they either get upset or they go, oh. But it's great that we're all so aligned that we can just kind of go off. The only meeting I can think of, we're having a meeting in this week about the Dreamlands in Delta
Uh,
Green and what that means. So who knows? We'll have a discussion and see what's going on.
this is a meeting you want to be in, not something about spreadsheets and
No.
quarterly reports or.
Oh God, no. And I did 15 years in video games, and about 70% of it was that.
uh,
Was just sitting and I gotta file this, and it's horrible. So I just swore never again. In 2015, I was like, I'm done.
yeah,
Like, never
and
going to do this again.
and you did. You went away
Yep.
and strike on your own. That's great. Um, just before we finish, I wanted to talk to you about your big, famous campaign, which is
Oh,
Impossible Landscape. It's going to
thanks.
be in our second wave of Delta Green product because a lot of people asked for it, and
Oh,
it's definitely one of the biggest campaign of Delta Green. And I wanted to you to tell us a little more about that.
sure. In an obsession of John Tynes and myself, going back even before I met him, was the King in Yellow. I love the King in Yellow, and John had written these kind of really perfect articles in the Unspeakable Oath called The Road to Hali, which were the core of what became Impossible Landscapes, all
Mhm.
come from John's initial ideas. And then John wrote short stories that I just adored, Broad Alvin and Madame Sosostris. And so I, John was going to write this campaign, and he just kept trying and trying and trying, and it never really came together in the 90s. And he just kind of stopped working on it. And he was like, I can't do that. So in 2014, I started to have ideas, or 2012, and I wrote a short game called Asylum, which was a little PDF. It's 10 pages or whatever. That was kind of like, let's play in the King in Yellow world, and that had a lot of more ideas which I saved, but it took John's ideas and made some more of mine and put it together with an insane asylum and was like, this is neat. We can make something out of it. So I started to have ideas from 2012 on. About 2014, I had a very clear vision of where I wanted to take the game. And I started running it without writing anything. I had night floors already. I just ran night floors and then started doing the Dorchester House second section, with Caleb and Ross, a bunch of role players online, just freeforming it, and they had a great time. We had just the best reactions at the table for the big switcheroo at the Dorchester House. I won't go into it,
No
but I
spoilers.
was like, this is something. So when the game went up for Kickstarter, I was like, oh yeah, I'll write that. And I was thinking of it as a 128-page little thing, and it's 370 pages or something like that. uh it's a lot of work, and I have
Yeah.
more for it. I cut 55,000 words from it.
No.
So we'll see what happens, but I want to eventually rewrite it to have a guide integrated into it and how to run it. So, but we'll see if that ever occurs. I have a lot of work to do right now. So
the director's cut of
yeah.
Impossible Landscape. Well, but it's thank you very much for all this insight. I'm very proud again to be the publisher of Delta Green in France, and I wish you all the best. Can you tell us about your project to finish? What's in the works right now?
Yeah, so I'm working on 2 large books, Delta Green, right now. One is called Operational History, which is everything from the birth of Delta Green to 1960, broken down into meticulous detail. So you want to know about the Innsmouth raid? I explain what happens in the Innsmouth raid minute to minute. Wow. I explain everything beginning to end. I give you hooks on how to get your players into it. I give you NPCs and artifacts and monsters that were found in it. And it does everything. So it goes, the Mountains of Madness are in there. You know, the 1920s is the deep ones. The 1930s is the Mountains of Madness. The 1940s is World War II. And the 1950s is Majestic and other North American threats. So that's the first book. The second book is called Deep State. And it's about what we're seeing. Amazingly, we were right about. It's being entered into the congressional record now of covert companies recovering non-human technology and working on it. This is going on in the American Congress, something I never thought I would ever see. And it all lines up exactly with Delta Green, special access programs for the program. Deep State is a book of nothing but those special access programs and how they work for March Technologies and what the remnants of what was once Majestic. And each one is a company, a product being produced based on some ancient alien tech, and then an adventure. So chunk. And it looks into the kind of the where and what fors of what Majestic looks like now that it's been destroyed and rebuilt as the program, how it runs on the ground. And I'm working on that one. And I'm finishing up an edit of Future Perfect to make it bigger. And that will go into Those Who Come After, which is a finished Great Race source book. So it's about the Great Race of Yith. And it covers all their history and all that kind of stuff. And then Future Perfect will be the adventure in the back of that. So amazing. Lots of work.
And you still find time to do some art on top of that.
Yeah, I'm paint. So whenever I get held up writing, I go and paint, and whenever I get held up painting, I go and write. So it's a good. Or I play Donkey Kong.
Great.
But
thank you so much, Dennis. It was a real pleasure, and I hope to see you in the near future and talk about more about what's next.
Thank you so much for doing such a great job.
Thank you.